I'm Tim Deuce. I'm a psychologist. I'm a songwriter. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about memory. Now, we'd all like to have a better memory. And what I'm not going to do today is go into some complicated, clever strategies that some super memory people can use. We'll do stuff like that in another video maybe. But today, it's just about having just better access, just easier, natural access to the memory that you already have with no effort, no struggling, no doing exercises or anything like that. Just simply having an easier time of it with memory. We're going to do that today by looking at three simple things. Now, the field of memory is enormous, but these three things will so simply make a massive difference. And they'll make a difference immediately. And you'll notice even more difference over the next few weeks. It comes down to belief. Now, if you believe you have a bad memory, you have a bad memory. If you believe you have a good memory, you have a good memory. And there's a very good reason for this. And that is that what a lot of people don't understand is we've got more than one memory for a start. We've got a short-term memory, we've got a long-term memory. We take stuff into the short-term memory all the time and discard it. We're deleting from that short-term memory all the time. A good example is where say you wanted to copy some information from somewhere. It's written on a page over here and you want to type it or write it over there. So you look at it and you get a few words and you write it down and you write it down. And once you've written it down over here, you don't need it anymore. So not only do you discard the piece of paper that you got the information from, you even discard the information because you've got it now written down for you. So that short-term memory trace tends to only last about 18 seconds. You know, if you're not constantly rehearsing it, which might perhaps push it into long-term memory, it's going to just disappear in that way. Now, even in long-term memory, stuff is disappearing too, because if you don't need to go there, if you don't need that particular information, your brain tends to sort of disconnect those nerve connections and put them in the places where they are needed. So there's a process of kind of good housekeeping, decluttering, which tends to go on in the brain, and it's actually very useful to be able to do that. So we tend to think of it as a failing, and it's not necessarily a failing at all. It's simply good housekeeping. But here's the thing: if you decide to believe that you've got a good memory instead of a bad memory, you will find that you're remembering more because you are in fact deleting less. Every time you think, I've got a bad memory, you're pressing the delete button. Every time you think, I've got a good memory, you're pressing the save button. So that's a simple one, but it really, really works. And you can start putting that into practice right away. The next thing is the issue of motivation, or that's a bit fancy really. Let's just call it want to. What do you want to remember? One thing's for darn sure, it's very difficult to memorize things that you don't want to remember, that you're not interested in. Now, the things that you are interested in, you will remember. The things that you're not interested in, you won't remember. That's not your fault. That's just your brain working smart. So congratulate your brain on that. And again, realize how good your memory actually is. And one way around that, though, sometimes, here's the thing. Let's suppose you go to a party and you're introduced to somebody and you say hi and you exchange names and you shake hands. You even say that person's name, and then 30 seconds later you want to say something to them and you actually can't remember their name. Even though you've actually even vocalized it yourself only 30 seconds before. Now, the reason that happened is because it went into your short-term memory and then was deleted. It wasn't transferred into the long-term memory, and it wasn't transferred into the long-term memory because you weren't really that interested. Now, ask yourself, is it because you're really uninterested in that person? Or is it that you just believe that you don't have a good memory for names? It's probably that. So you can decide to believe that you do have a good memory for names. And also, you can cultivate your want to. Now, for example, just realizing that remembering people's names is very socially advantageous. There's a lot in it for you, a lot of value in it for you. Politicians practice it a lot, by the way. You know, you might be introduced to them and they shake hands and so on. And then when it's time to go, they say, well, you know, I really must go. But Tim, thank you. It's been really nice meeting you. And they go off. And you think, oh, because they remembered your name. You've probably forgotten their name already, by the way. But they remembered yours. And that made a big impression on you. So knowing the impression that it made on you when somebody remembered your name, think about the impression that you're going to make on this other person when you remember their name. So social networking, business networking, just people thinking you're a nice guy, it's really valuable. It's really useful. And when there's a lot in it for you, there's a reason to do it. So cultivate that want to. Cultivate the motivation for remembering those things, and you'll find automatically it starts to work for you, because you're constantly saying to your brain, I want this, as opposed to saying to your brain, don't bother, I'm not interested in this. Simple, yeah? Okay, third and final. We're getting near to the end. We're moving through this so quickly. The final one is, it's actually quite hard to remember things in isolation. If you can remember any piece of information and its relationship to the big picture, the easier it's going to be. So what do I mean by that? Well, you learn a new piece of information. It might be on the news, might be anywhere. Now, you ask yourself for a second, does this make sense? Does it make sense with what you've heard before? Does it contradict what you've heard before? What else do you know about this subject? As soon as you start to do that, then this becomes then a piece in this, a piece of the puzzle, if you like. And it's got its place where it fits with all the other pieces of information in this overall story. And so it's actually much, much easier to remember them because it makes sense. There are connections with other things that you already know. And the more connections there are with other pieces of information that you have in your head, then the easier it is to retrieve that information. Psychologists call them retrieval hooks. The more retrieval hooks there are, in other words, the more connections to other pieces of information there are, the easier it is to find that single piece of information. And that's very valuable when it comes to learning a language or learning about any area of knowledge, but also it's handy socially, getting back to this business of the party and being introduced to this person. When you are aware, you're aware of the party and the people there and the people in the room, the people in that group that you were talking with when you met this person, what they were wearing, who they knew, how come they came to the party, who they knew at the party, and who maybe even who they knew that wasn't at the party but that you knew, or whatever. Any of those connections that show where that person is connected to other areas of your life, actually, then the easier it's going to be to remember them and everything about them, including their name. So there we are, just to quickly recap. So be aware of the delete switch, the delete button, and aware that an enormous amount of what you probably thought was sort of breakdown forgetting was actually intentional forgetting. It was deleting. And know that, of course, if you want to delete something, then please do. But if you want to remember something, instead of going to delete, go to save. And go there by simply reminding yourself on a daily basis that actually you do have a great memory. You just thought that you didn't. That's the first thing. Second one, motivation. What we're motivated to remember, we remember. And if you're having a little difficulty remembering something, then try to find a reason why it might be of value to you personally to remember those things. Think, what's in it for me? And if there is something in it for you, then you're going to find that you're going to remember. And then the third thing, connections. Does this make sense? Does this fit in with everything else that I know? All the other information that I know? Does it agree or does it disagree? Does it make sense? What are the connections? That's the final thing. So with those three things, just three simple bits of knowledge about how memory actually works, straight away that gives you better memory. It'll be interesting to see how this is going to affect you in the rest of today and over the next 2 or 3 weeks as you're enjoying having a great memory. Now we've come through that, we come to music of the day time, and while it's playing, please hit the subscribe button, give this a big thumbs up, leave any comments or questions down below on the subject of memory or any of these other related things, and just have a great day, and I'm looking forward already to seeing you in the next video.